All right, we're live. And it is January 6th, 2023. What are we having today? Well, again, gonna be having some poetry. As you know, literature is one of our contents. So we are gonna be having again Robert Frost, the iconic poem "The Road Not Taken." Going to be analyzing it for this session, and I will also be sharing two poems. No, two poems I wrote as a response to this poem by Robert Frost. You know, after I analyzed it. There, so I guess we better have a channel ID first. Alright.
Nagkakaroon na naman ng pagtaas ng COVID-19 cases dito sa Pilipinas. Subalit ayon sa gobyerno, wala raw
Dahil ang pagsuyo ko ay multong haplos. Huli na akong lumampi ng 1,000 taon. Papailing ning paggamit ning folk beliefs related to the Venisban.
Nonglo or the Kinabayong could very well be an articulation of this folk.
Then we go farther forward and we'll go to the false shield. At saka ito syempre ang ating sword. Kasi naman ano po kung talagang may sombrero po dito.
So how do we analyze Robert Frost's seminal work, The Road Not Taken? Okay, and do I have a response poem for this particular work as well? As you know, I'm also a writer. I am a college professor, albeit on leave because I'm into farm work right now. I'm also into literature. You might want to check my WordPress blog. Maybe I'll post here the link to it. That particular blog was started by me, I think, in 2006, and it contains a lot of my ruminations, essays, published poems, also a lot of my literary activities from then until I think around April, April or May of 2014, where I actually shifted to Facebook. Also, I also have a Facebook page for my literary pursuits. It's also called Hagbayon, so you might want to check it. Hagbayon is actually a magazine type Facebook page featuring all of my literary activities, published works, some links to this channel, a lot of photos of my memorabilia, my literary museum, a small literary museum. And of course, I have a page also for prepping survivalism in blade culture, where I also write about history and culture of the Bicolanos pertaining to Filipino martial arts and blade culture. It's called the Minasbad Shop. So you might want to check it out as well. And of course, this channel my previous posts on literature, lots of poetry gigs, uh, which I posted years back when I was still organizing literary events. And when I was still part of this rock poetry band called the Super Poet Genome Project. So there. Um, let's go now to a close reading of this particular poem by Robert Frost. So let's hear the great poet first. We have a clip here of him reciting this particular poem.
Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth, then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that, the passing there had worn them really about the same, and both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference.
All right, let's look at the form of the poem first. You might want to have your own copy as well of this particular poem. Actually, the poem is composed of one, two, three, four stanzas. Um, the title is The Road Not Taken, as mentioned earlier. But is this not the poem, The Road Less Traveled? I'm sure you're familiar with that poem, The Road Less Traveled. Is there really such a poem? Well, maybe. Maybe someone wrote something like that, but this is not that poem. This poem is called The Road Not Taken. But there's a line here, uh, the penultimate line, found in the last stanza. Stanza, one, two, three, penultimate lines, fourth line of the last stanza. Because each stanza contains 5 lines. It reads, I took the one less traveled by. So I guess this particular line, which reads, I took the one less traveled by, okay, is actually the source of the mistake. A lot of people, because of this particular line, um, actually think that this poem is entitled "The Road Less Traveled," when in fact it's not. And in fact, most people actually just consider the last 3 lines of this poem, and they forget that you know the poem is more than 3 lines, according to to quote a YouTuber. Usually, we just quote, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. So that's usually what we just quote, when in fact the poem has a lot more lines than that. As per form, a poem is a literary genre. It has a particular form, And as we said earlier, as we said in our previous live stream, poetry is akin to music. So it's akin to music. Whereas fiction or prose is paragraphic, poetry is stanzai. Okay, whereas prose is paragraphic, uh, poetry is stanzai. So there. As we said, the poem has four stanzas, each stanza with five lines. The rhyme scheme, reading it, apparently is A, B, A, B, C, D, C, C, D, E, F, E, E, F, and G, H, G, G, H. So therefore, Robert Frost is particularly consistent with this poem when we talk of rhyme scheme. However, when we talk of metric syllabication, it's not quite as consistent. The first line, the first stanza, has 9 syllables per line. He's consistent with that, but as for the second stanza, we have 9, 9, 10, 8, 9 as syllabication. Third stanza, we have 9, 8, 10, 9, 10. Last stanza, we have 9, 8, 9, 8, 9. 9, 8, 9. The syllabication, therefore, is not so consistent. So there. Now let's start with our analysis as per content. I'm hoping that you have your copies as well. By the way, this will be uploaded later. Okay. Well, this is live, but this will be uploaded later. The first line goes: two roads diverged in a yellow wood. We have here the depiction of two roads. Um, Apparently, the poem is talking about a trail, really, not really a road, but a trail, a forest trail. And the poem is saying that the trail or the roads diverged, in a yellow wood. Yellow wood. So let's imagine uh, the four seasons, okay? When the forest is yellow, okay, apparently here in the Philippines we don't have four seasons, but in the US or in Europe they have four seasons. Uh, when we talk of yellow wood, then we actually mean autumn, no? Autumn or fall. Um, Somewhat symbolic of you know the latter years of one's existence or old age. Um, let's proceed. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. Yeah, of course, if you are alone, you cannot, you cannot cut yourself in halves and actually, uh, negotiate both roads. Uh, you can only, travel one. So the persona here is saying that he's sorry because he cannot travel both. Okay, sorry. Let's proceed. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both, and be one traveler. Long I stood. Because it's just one traveler, the poem is saying, or the persona is saying that he's quite confused and he's standing there, thinking which road to take. Okay, let's proceed. And looked down one as far as I could. Well, naturally, uh, one would really try to figure, where the roads would lead. So here the persona is trying to, peer or trying to discern or trying to look at the path and, try to get some clues, in short, as to where the roads would lead. So we could, make a better choice. So there, let's proceed. Okay, and look down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. So, the road usually has a bend, it has a turn, and the thing is, when you're in the forest, there's also undergrowth. These are vegetation, under the trees, bushes, something like that, leaves, small trees or young trees, tall grass. Okay, so the persona here is trying to discern where each of the road would lead, and he is being challenged by the undergrowth. Difficult to actually see. So there, let's proceed to the second stanza. Then took the other as just as fair. Hmm. So while trying to look at the two roads, uh, the persona is now starting to figure which of the road you will actually choose. No, uh, you know, then took the other as just as fair and having perhaps the better claim because it was grassy and wanted wear. Well, for his from his perspective, apparently the other one was more grassy and wanted wear, or for him the other one was not the usual route, I guess. So that's why it was more appealing to him. But what, let's look at the point. Let's proceed. Though as for that, the passing there had warned them really about the same. So this is a very tricky poem. So we must not misinterpret this poem. Uh, so let's read it again. Let's read the second stanza. Then took the other as just as fair in having perhaps a better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that, the passing there, the persona is saying that this one is grassy, yes. But if you think about it, the other road, okay, had warned them really about the same. More or less, the other road is also as grassy as the one that he actually prefers. Now let's proceed. Okay, and both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Mhm. And both that morning, and this was actually morning, that time of the day is actually mentioned in the poem. It's actually in the morning. And according to him, that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. So equally lay. So even if this persona has a particular, penchant for the other one, for the other path, he must admit that the other path is also as grassy, you know, as difficult, to negotiate as this other one that he actually chose. Let's proceed. Uh, oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. So there. Actually, his initial intention was to come back for that other road some other time. But well, according to him, knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. So there, according to the persona, he may not come back because he wouldn't really know where the road would lead, and maybe it would lead him to his destination, or it would lead him home, and he might not have the same opportunity again, and proper schedule to actually do this particular trail again, to do this particular hike again. So that's a literal, the literal level of the poem. Let's proceed to the last stanza, also composed of 5 lines. Okay, I shall be telling this with a sigh. So, as if there's some kind of a, you know, some kind of a, not really melancholy, some sort of heavy emotion connected with this particular choice of his, and he's gonna tell us about it. I shall be telling this with a sigh. Some were ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by. And that has made all the difference. The question now is, did the persona take the road less traveled? No, judging from what he's saying here in the poem. Now you have to look back at the second and third stanza, hidden somewhere, you know, in between the second and the third stanzas are the lines. Though as for that, the passing there had one of them really about the same, and both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Meaning to say, it's really no difference, no big difference between the two roads. But you know what? He had to move on, so he had to make a choice, correct? So, you know, jump, you know, jumping before he looked, because he couldn't really look at you know, look at the destination. He couldn't really discern where the roads would lead. He was trying to choose which road to take, but apparently the roads were almost identical. No, this is not like what we imagine, all the time, that we see a fork road and the other one is more trodden than the other. The other one is more grassy. The other one is, clearer because more people would use that particular path. No, that's not the case here. We have here two roads that are almost identical. All they're both grassy, etc. So one is as good as the other. So the persona here is saying that he chose the other one over the other and accepted, you know, and accepted the path, and considered it as the one less traveled by. Okay, and because of that, because he made up his mind, because he was decisive, that has made all the difference. That has made all the difference. This poem talks about optimism. This poem is telling us that we must let the past be, and that we must live with our choices, and trust that it was the correct one. In one interview, Robert Frost said that he was well, he's dead now. Uh, that he was actually a very optimistic person. Optimistic in the sense that he was always optimistic of the past, of the present, and of the future. He was optimistic of the past in the sense that he liked to think that as per the past, we must just, accept the past and that we just have the trust that we cannot really have it any other way when we talk about the past because the past is past and we must just accept our choices. So for him, we must be optimistic of the past in the sense that we must trust that the past should have really gone the way it went, you know. So in same with the present, that this particular present will also be uh, how it should be when we look back in the future. So there. So this is a poem about optimism, about letting the past be, um, living with our choices. Why do we have this particular interpretation? This poem was written in 1916 as part of Robert Frost's poetry collection called Mountain Interval. This was written actually in England, yes, in 1915, and became a part of that poetry collection I mentioned, Mountain Interval, which was published the next year after that, which was 1916. And at this particular point, we had a literary movement we call modernism. Okay, writers were predominantly, especially writers from the West, were predominantly modernist. Um, there was now the belief that the individual, calls the shots. Uh, there was not there was now the belief in reasoning. It was the age of reason, the age of logic, etc. So in a way, uh, part and parcel of being logical is being sequential. You can no longer change the past, and we must accept the past. Whatever choices that we make, we must trust that our rationality uh, made the right choice, and we must trust that we would never have had it any other way, or something like that. Um, Also, this poem is actually, something like a joke, by Robert Frost, uh, uh, for his friend. He had a writer friend named um, Edward 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 Thomas. Edward Thomas was a poet as well. He lived in um, England, and as you know, Robert Frost went to UK to find his luck as a poet because it was very difficult for him in America. So he went to England, and there he published his first poetry collection, and he made a lot of friends. And he would always look at England as also his poetic home. And because of that, he made a lot of friends there, including Edward Thomas, who was a poet and who was a very uh, indecisive person. Was always indecisive. And Robert Frost and Edward Thomas used to hike together. They would hike a lot and they would explore the countryside. Flora and fauna, different species of birds, etc. And whenever there's fork road, no, whenever they would be in a situation where they had to choose a particular path between two or three paths. Now, Edward Thomas was always indecisive. And after taking a particular path, he would always be saying that, you know what, we should have taken the other path because there's nothing here. Remember that they would hike to actually explore the woods, to actually explore the forest, nature, and they would hope that they would find something interesting. But what if they wouldn't find any? That's when Edward Thomas would sort of rant and exclaim that, you know what, we should have taken the other road. So he was very indecisive. Um, that's why Robert Frost made this poem for his good friend. And this was actually a joke. This is a very tricky poem. Uh, it's very easy to misinterpret this poem. But looking at it, it's really just a poem about being decisive. It's really just a poem about trusting one's instinct and letting our decisions rest, which is very much characteristic of modernist thinking. You know, that we must trust our wisdom, that we must trust our decisions and our rationality. Okay, uh-huh. Mhm. Uh-huh. I think that's it for our close reading of Robert Frost's poem. Okay, The Road Not Taken. Now let's have my response poem. You know, I like to read poets by poems by great poets and try to really analyze them. And when I get inspired by these poets and poems, I also come up with my own. Um, like in this particular instance. So let me share you with you two poems in Filipino that I actually came up with. I'm gonna be sharing the poem Lagalag. The Lagalag is actually a poem in two parts. I do have a video for the first part, but for the second part, maybe I will just read it. So the first part.
Taglagas ng Lagalag. Pagkatapos ng The Road Not Taken ni Robert Frost. Muli kang dumaan nung isang taglagas, nang may sangang daan sa pusod ng gubat. Pinagmasdan kitang iyong sinisipat kung saan ang tungo ng dalawang landas. Nang iyong suungin itong tugaygayan, nang iyong yakapin itong talahiban, tingin mo'y kumiling sa kabilang daan na kung tutuusi masukal rin naman. Ngunit tumuloy kang tila natitiyak na bakas ng bukas ay hindi pa atras, na bawat pagyapak, pagkupkup ng gubat, muli kang dumaan ng isang taglagas.
All right, that's the first poem that I came up with as a response to Robert Frost's The Road Not Taken. It's the first part of a poem I call Taglagas. The second part is actually entitled Taglagas ng Lagalag. The second part is entitled Dapit Hapon ng Lagalag. Dapit hapon ng lagalag. Kumulo ang sabaw sa palayok. Kasama na ang mga sibuyas, bawang at luya. Tulad ng buwan sa labas ng yungib, tapyas na rin ang bumbunan ng buko. Habang marahang sumasanib ang dilim sa Tugaygayan. Tulad ng panghihimasok dito ng mga nalagas na dahon, ng mga halamanan at gulayan, damo at talahib. Dinakma ng pantas ang dalag sa buslo na katabi ng ginugon at salakab. Inilagak niya ito sa palayok. Maya-maya napabuntong hininga ang pantas. At nakangiting hinipa ng apoy ng palayok. Habang sa labas ng yungib, dala ng simoy ang nagsausok na sampalok. Dapit hapon ng lagalag. The second of my response poems in Filipino. All right. If you want to read those poems, you could find them in my Facebook page called Hagbayon. If you want to read the text. So how are you there? Hope you're doing well, and I hope you also like poetry like I do. Okay, there, Jason here for the Hagbayon Channel and TMS Talks. Remember, the pen is mightier with the sword, and some poetry. Thanks for watching.